I'm pleased to introduce Elodie Ternaux, who's a French entrepreneur and a scholar of materials. And she created a material library, which reminds me of the fact that in Berkeley we have a material library of all the woods in the world. And it was established in the 19th century as part of a colonial effort to understand where all the wood in the world comes from and how it's different. And in fact, each material is represented as a carved book. It looks like a book, but it's carved in the it's a piece of wood that's shaped, that's carved in the shape of a book, and it actually represents itself. It's a sample of the material. It's a book made of the material to represent the material. So my curious question for Elodie is, how does she represent her own materials? And I guess we will see some of that and learn some of that. Elodie is a partner in Matériaux. Matériaux is both the French plural for materials, but also sounds very elegant because it sounds like I/O or input/output. So that's the name of the company, and she studied at INPG and ENSCI Les Ateliers. So she's joining us as a visitor from the French science desk and the science attaché, and that is Philippe Perez. And Philippe Perez might have a few more things to say about Elodie. No? Okay.
I could, but
you want to, but
it will take hours. So, yeah.
Okay. So let's welcome Elodie and get started. Thanks for joining us. Please welcome Elodie.
Hello. I don't know if it's working. Is it working? Yeah, the mic? Yeah?
Yes,
yeah?
we can
okay.
hear you.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us. A special thanks to Philippe, of course, who's been taking very good care of us. Well, I guess that I feel like the material girl in the material world in this situation, maybe like the first degree girl as well. Because as you're going to see, we're going to talk about materials, but like real materials. What I've prepared for you today is kind of like a mind game, I would say. It's just like, okay, you say transparency. What does it bring to mind for me? It will bring things like, well, it's a question of perception, first of all, I would say. Then also a question of materials, obviously, of course. And, well, it's see-through materials. Then there is this question of transparent, not exactly transparent. There's going to be things dealing with, well, let's play with this question of transparency and maybe some surprises that it can bring. And also the question that is maybe a little bit less first degree of transparency is also this question of simplicity, of privacy, as we have already discussed. The question of, yes, being an open book, being able to trace things and becoming invisible. So that's what we're going to discuss very quickly. I just should start my timer. So first thing, I guess that this question of transparency is indeed a main question of perception. Because in a sense, something can be transparent for someone and not be transparent for someone else. Perception, in this case, and most of the time when we deal with materials is the issue, and perception is everything. Under which eyes is it transparent? Under which wavelengths of light does it really, is it really transparent? That's also one of the main questions in terms of materials. And one example is this type of windows, well, a glass material. And this German company came up with an idea to save birds. Because I don't know if you know that, but like thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of birds are dying every year just because, well, they did not see that there was a building. Architects like transparency, so they like to make like big windows, and the glass is transparent for us, which is great, but it's not that great for birds. Because they forget that there is something, they don't even know that, and it's too late and they die. So being kind of concerned by this fate of birds, this company came up with an idea that is actually a very biomimetic idea, because they noticed that, first of all, birds, they do not crash into spider webs. And it turns out that spiders, they are actually generating a silk. We know that. But within the silk, there is a substance that is actually reflecting UV light. And birds can see the UV light. So the idea of this company was to kind of make a surface treatment on top of the glass. A surface treatment that is almost not visible for us humans. So the glass remains transparent, let's say, and the birds do see the glass, and they just like, and make a U-turn, and they survive. So it's why it's much better to live in Germany for birds than it is in other countries. That's an example of transparency for who? Well, not for everybody at least. Another type of wavelengths that helps us see through and see things that are, well, under the normal eyes are not transparent are the X-rays, for instance, or other types of imaging that are used in the medical field. And they are able to go through some materials in order for us to see what's inside. So transparency, again, things that can be transparent, but not in terms of light and seeing through, but being transparent to sound, for instance. And those textiles that are appreciated by people that are actually building, manufacturing speakers are textiles that are really transparent to sound. Like as much as possible sound goes through the textile, which is quite useful when you are dealing with music and stuff like that, for instance. Transparency is also a question of scale. If you think about it, materials that are opaque, like metals, for instance, well, if you just have a very, very thin layer, talking about like microns or nanometers of metal, well, it becomes kind of transparent. You can see through that. The material is the same. The fact that it is not transparent at first remains the same, but the fact that you are in a very thin layer for us with the human eyes makes them transparent. So question of perception and question of scale. In terms of materials, well, when you think about it also like 2 seconds, hair is transparent, water is transparent, usually, although sometimes it's too polluted to really be, but in terms of like materials that we deal with on a regular basis, well, probably the king of transparency, like right away, is glass. And it has been one of the first materials actually worked with that is really transparent, which is a crazy property when you think about it, like being transparent, being there without being seen. And we will discuss that again when we discuss the invisibility question, but it's wow, having this property of being there without being there. And glass used to be the king of transparency. And it used to be as expensive as gold. And now it's like $0.3 per kilos. So glass is just like nothing. It has become so not incredible to be transparent at the end. I don't know about you, but the fact that the material is transparent nowadays is not something that really just amazes us. It's just so normal to be able to be transparent, and we do not think about it that much. But glass is quite amazing and is also progressing, and we are now able to make very, very thin layers of glass to the point that they become completely flexible. One thing is that we know how to do that. What is surprising is that most of the uses so far of this type of very thin sheets of glass are just for devices like that, which so far are not that flexible, mainly breakable as well. But we do not use that much the property of flexibility that is brought by the thinness of the material. But in this case, anyway, we are dealing with transparency. So we can be very thin, very flexible, and transparent. We can use glass to, have roofs become transparent. Why not? Because underneath those tiles, you can actually install a whole system to heat water so that you save energy in a way. So it's not photovoltaic cells, but it's one way to use the light going through the tiles and heating some water in order to have a heating system in your house. In this case, there is no window, there is no glass, there is in fact no transparency. It's just an illusion of transparency created by this company selling you lighting panels that are so great in terms of recreating the daylight, for instance, that it really makes you believe that your roof is transparent. They are even able to recreate various kinds of light, meaning that if you want to believe that you live under the Swedish sun, even though you are living in San Francisco, that's possible. You just have to ask for it, and it will create a light that is specific to the northern countries, for instance. Glass is transparent, but as soon as, for instance, you play with lasers, you can break the glass with tiny, tiny breaks that will recreate 3D images, because the light does not go through like directly anymore, but it's kind of stopped at some point. This is a technology that you probably know of. They sell you like tiny cubes of glass with 3D stuff. You can even have your whole face and body in 3D created and engraved like that. Glass, and one of the latest development at the MIT this summer is now we can rapid prototype objects using glass. So they are able to, using the fused deposition methods, they are able to deposit hot, melted glass layers after layers to create objects that are made out of glass, using rapid prototyping processes. But so glass used to be the king until plastics arrived. And nowadays, plastics are more transparent, or some plastics, some polymers, such as acrylic, can be more transparent than glass. In this image, on the left side, it would be a glass window made out of glass, and you can see that it's a little bit more greenish blue. On the right side, it's going to be an acrylic window, and it's much better at letting the light go through the material. So acrylic, optically speaking, is more transparent than glass, which can be quite useful. And talking about rapid prototyping, this company is now able to produce also just by dropping few drops of acrylic, and they are able to produce optical lenses using rapid prototyping processes, which is really time saving in terms of all these optical lenses manufacturing questions. It's of course made out of acrylic, so the so-called organic glass. I was telling you that transparent is also like the almost transparent. There are a lot of translucent materials, and in this story, and still speaking of glass here, on the right side you have an image of aerogel, glass aerogel crystals. And this material is in fact glass, but it's only 1 or 2% of glass, the rest is air. So a very, very light material. Turns out that it has great insulative properties, thermal insulative properties. On the left side, you have an image of a diatom or a radiolaria. Diatoms are animals living under the sea, very tiny animals that are able, under the sea, without light, without heat, without anything, producing a skeleton that is made out of glass, let's say. This has been the object of a lot of studies, of course, because it would be great for us if we were able to actually manufacture glass without using a lot of heat. the idea of saving energy nowadays, what pushes us to find ways to manufacture materials not going to temperatures up to 1,000 degrees or even more than that. That's the case when you work with steel, and that's the case when you work with glass. So we would save a lot of energy if you knew how to make glass as those guys are able to in nature. And these aerogels, well, they're almost transparent, but they're not quite transparent. They are also called solid smoke. As you can see here, they have this there without being there look, appearance. So, well, there are researchers trying to have them become transparent, but it seems that it's quite difficult. So, well, at some point, manufacturers decided that, okay, they cannot be transparent, so we will not be able to have like a window in a house or a building that is going to use aerogel to insulate the building and being transparent. So we are going to play with this almost transparent status, and we just are going to use these tiny crystal-like materials in order to insulate buildings, but as well as you can buy this jacket and go to the North Pole and just be really, really fine, and it's very light, of course. Another question about transparency is being able to see through. That's one of the definition, of course. Seeing through, well, sometimes you can be surprised by seeing through things. This project from Meg Grant is a proposal for you to be able to see through a body, or at least have light going through the body. Actually, she designed a jacket that is full of optical fibers. So this creates a network in between the back and the front of the person. So you get the illusion that the light goes through. Of course, as you know, well, so far this lady is not transparent. So it's just playing with the idea of transparency. But some materials are also playing with this idea of seeing through. Carpet, which is something that usually is not transparent. Well, those guys, they have come up with the idea of using everything transparent in the manufacturing of the carpet. So the carpet turns out to be kind of transparent or translucent. So if you install a flooring system that is lighting up, then you put the carpet on top of that, and you have things that will appear from underneath the carpet. So far, as you will see, very, very important uses, like life-changing uses, like you could have like designs appearing on your floor, or logos, very important logos. But, well, maybe you will find more interesting ways to use this product, which is a very, of course, expensive system, because you have to install the whole lighting flooring. But, well, that's open to be used. Well, with the same idea of having a floor that lights up, which is funny when you show this carpet, is that most of the time people look up because they're used to have like projections coming from the ceiling. So they're just looking for the projector, but it comes from underneath. In this case, that's the same situation. This is a glass floor with a lighting system underneath. And as you have probably experienced that if you are playing sports indoor, you have like you're playing tennis, but the guys before they were playing handball, and then you have volleyball, and you have like all those lines, and you don't even know where it stops, and so it's very difficult to play. You don't know where it starts and where it ends. And in this case, well, it's just you push a button and you get a tennis court, and then you push another button and you will have the volleyball court, just thanks to this floor that is completely transparent. Transparency and the fact that, well, this project from Tadao Ando kind of, I don't know about you, but makes you want to believe. This is a church that is in Osaka, and it's just like a cut in the wall, but quite efficient, and actually you really see through that. And with the same idea, some people came up with a combination of optical fibers and concrete. And well, it turns out that it makes walls become transparent or translucent at least. So you can imagine nowadays have a house with a wall that is using this material, and so that you will see the shadow of the trees outside. You would, of course, see the dog of the neighbor peeing on your house, and you have to be aware of the fact that as soon as it's dark, well, inside, if you have the light on, that's the contrary that happens, and again, this question of privacy, well, people will see you, at least your shadow. And with the same spirit, many different offers in terms of materials have been made with bigger optical fibers or pieces of acrylic. And the same system here with wood. Wood and optical fibers combined together, and it becomes a translucent wood, or a wood that you can kind of see through. What the legend says that you can watch TV without opening the doors of your closet, because there are enough optical fibers for you to see the image through the doors. And you can imagine many uses of this type of material. Another way of looking at transparency would be let's play with it. And there are many materials that you can play with that will help you either play with the colors, because transparency is not in contradiction with the fact of having colors, of course. But you can also play with polarizers, polarizer films that will be things like that. And I don't know if it will work with this distance, but playing with these, you can either see through or be completely opaque. Those are films that these guys are using. Same thing here, effects with transparency and opacity with micro shade films. Or in this case, you're playing with the reflection of light, and this Roslov Grove project with Lasvit, which is a Czech glass company, and they did, actually it doesn't look like it, but it's a very amazing technology prowess in the fact of being able to have these float glass that are thermoformed and then that can be bended, and it creates amazing light effects as if you were playing with water. And you can play also with hydrochromic pigments. Those hydrochromic pigments, in fact, when they are dry, they are white. So as you can see with this umbrella on the left side, you have this white design on top of the umbrella. And as soon as it rains, the hydrochromic pigment goes from white to transparent. So it reveals the colors that are underneath. It means that as soon as it rains, colors appear, and you're very happy that it rains. It's an English, London-based project, of course. Yeah. Not a project from your area. So playing with this idea of transparency, and you can also use it for shower curtains. Why not? As soon as you take your shower, the colors are appearing. Transparency and privacy. There's been this fashion of like open spaces in offices. Was considered to be a good thing for a long time. Well, we know now that it's not such a good idea, and that in fact it kind of reduces the productivity of the workers. But so more and more people are trying to find ways to bring back intimacy or privacy areas so that people can feel a little bit more protected and be more efficient at work. And materials, in that sense, can help. You have films that you can use that are going to vary their transparency or translucity depending on how you look at them. So this can create like spaces where you don't see, but you see. So it's an in-between in terms of privacy. And that's a project that is using that as well for a personal closet. In this case, this product is a film that is put in between two panels of glass, and you just have to push a button and it turns from translucent to transparent. Again, a nice way to like right away get privacy. And those textiles are one-way vision. So this is also something you can play with, transparent looking on one side and becoming opaque on the other side. Another issue could be, let's be surprised by these questions of transparency and play with this hide and seek. I want to reveal, but not exactly. That's a project I really like of this, looks like a very traditional old farm. And in fact, it's completely in glass, and it's printed glass, recreating the image of an old building. And from time to time, there is like openings. So some areas are not printed so that you can actually see through what's going on inside the building. It's just playing with the printing, reflection, and transparency. Or you can play with this idea of being able to see through, but also being able to actually show some films and images. So those people from Canada, this company, and I really strongly recommend to the people that are speaking French to look at their video, because it's just like really great, really funny, I would say. But they came up with this system of a screen that is in between two pieces of glass, again. So you can actually see through, but you can also have like a TV and films going on. So it's so far some uses like that are very commercial uses for fridges when you buy your beverages and stuff like that. But you could imagine other ideas. In fact, you probably recall the film Minority Report. Well, at that time, when you were looking at Tom Cruise playing with this transparency and like interactivity, and it was like a TV screen, but this was not possible, technology speaking. It was, okay, almost doable in laboratories, but it was not there. This is there, that's now. Here you can, those systems are using fog, so an almost not there transparent material, and they can project a 3D image on fog that you can play with. Those guys are doing the same, but they added the question of interactivity via laser beams. They can actually like situate you in 3D, and you can interact with the 3D image that is just kind of like an hologram. And same thing with the promise of Magic Leap, this idea of having an image appear from nowhere. That is in between transparent and there. And I think that one of their main issues actually is fighting against the idea of transparency in this image and try to really make us believe that it is true, so that they need to get rid of this idea of, okay, I know that this is an image because actually I can almost see through it. So they are also playing, I guess, with those questions of transparency. Another way of looking at transparency would be simplicity. I think that being transparent and the things that we have heard this morning are in the same spirit. Being simple is one way to be transparent in a sense. And it's true that when you look at technology and technological stuff, my computer here is just like a box that I don't know what's going on inside, and it's very complicated, and there is no simplicity in that. So being able to read how things are made would help this question of transparency. Probably a debate that we could have in terms of is it a good or a bad thing to be able to read how things work. I think that a lot of manufacturers prefer that we do not know how it works, of course. But that's one of the issues. And just one project that I like, that I think is very simple and quite transparent, it's a system just to boil water. But instead of having like a big bottle, and most of the time you do not use all the water that you've boiled and just throw it away, etc. This is just a tiny piece of metal that you put inside your cup, and there is an induction system, which is kind of a black box as well. So, but still, this, like, it smells like simplicity to me, and it shows how it works, and you just have your cup of tea using this system. Another issue that we could link to transparency in the same spirit, this question of being an open book, this question of sharing information, and as designers, explaining how we do things. You probably have heard of this trend of being a designer maker. To be a real designer maker, by the way, you need to look like that. It means that you need to have a bird. You need to wear like kind of like almost Canadian woodworking shirts and stuff like that. So you need to be well built and share a lot of values, like only eating organic food, for instance. And so once you are a designer maker, the idea for you should be to be a little bit transparent in the sense that you are going to share how you do things. A designer maker is someone that is not only interested in the results, in doing something, but also in sharing how it has been done. And the making is even more important than the object themselves. So as you can see, this designer is explaining how he came up with the resulting object that we are going to see in just the second slide, but he is using recycled plastic, and it just heats it in his garage, and it just puts 2 wood sticks, and then voila, you get a lamp and you get a chair. Same idea here, a chair made out of artichoke fibers, and we show you, well, the designer is showing you how it is made. And like really this spirit of open source, and you could do it yourself, I am explaining you all the steps, and this is how it works. So to be a real designer maker, that's really what you need to do, to share, to be an open book in terms of your methods. Another project, another chair, another lamp, of course, but made differently. In this idea of being an open book, well, there's probably a need for more transparency in terms of sustainability issues, and the fact that a lot of the things that we buy or that we make are not always made where we believe they are made, and we don't always know, or most of the time we don't know where things come from, where they have been transformed. Even if you would have a label telling you made in USA, you are not sure that everything has actually been made in USA comes from USA. So some brands are trying to be a little bit more transparent in that sense. Nudie Jeans is a company that is trying, at least, and they just put online a guide, a production guide, that is supposed to help you identify where things come from when you buy a jean or a jacket. So you can select the type of garment that you are dealing with, and then see where it has been made, and you can follow also like kind of a sourcing of their materials, where did the cotton come from, etc., and where has it been soon assembled, dyed, etc. You even have like images of the factories, and they are also involved in a process of really trying to work as a life cycle. Like the jean is something that you break in, that you can repair, and you should not like discard the fact that you can repair stuff. So they even have like repair shops that you can just visit and to have your jeans repaired. You can recycle them, and they even offer products made out of recycled jeans. So they're into this kind of a loop system, trying to be a little bit more transparent. Same thing here for this American company offering you T-shirts that are made in USA from American cotton, organic cotton, and they're trying to be as transparent as they can. And they also, and most of those companies are, I don't know if it's just greenwashing or trying to persuade us to buy their product, but they even admit their faults and the fact that they are not perfect, and they even list what they could do better. Another way of tracing things would be, for instance, the other way, not taking the product and trying to go back, but taking the source, which is in this case a pig being slaughtered. And this designer, Christian Mendesma, she followed the pig from the day he died to what he has become. And this is quite amazing, and you would not believe how many materials actually use pigs. Pig something, oil, fat, meat, whatever. But as you can see, those are a few examples of products, materials where she found the pig or part of the pig. And with the same spirit and same designer, she played with 100 kilos of waste that were burnt into 15 kilos of dust. And the 15 kilos, she analyzed everything. And she traced every tiny piece of material, of matter that were in this 15 kilos of burnt waste. And she found out that there are many valuable things that we could reuse, of course. Invisibility, to finish with, it's a kind of a myth, something that we, for some people, would like to possess as a power. Other people would tell you that they know all about invisibility because nobody never notices them. But invisibility can be, as well as transparency, interpreted in various ways. Invisibility, okay, it's transparent, I do not see it, it's almost not there, but it is functional. For instance, these textures on the chocolate here are, in fact, on top of the chocolate, you have an invisible, almost imperceptible texture, very thin surface treatment that brings color. There is no color involved, but there is a texture of the surface that make it so that the light plays with it and it brings color, which is the same thing when you look at butterfly wings. They are, in fact, made out of transparent layers, scales, like fish skin, and there is no color involved, but we see color. Those are samples, if you come this afternoon, that you will be able to see. Same thing here, invisible but functional, inspired by shark skin antibacterial films. Well, it has been noticed that shark skins, and that's what a shark skin looks like when you look at it with a microscope, offers a very non-welcoming surface for bacteria. So they do not like to stay there, so they do not stay there, they do not reproduce, and they leave. On the right side, there is a macroscopic view of a plastic film that has been inspired by the shark skin and that has antibacterial properties. This is a transparent photovoltaic film, of course very appreciated already by those guys doing mobile phones, so that maybe one day this will not happen. Your phone will be autonomous in the sense that it will just get enough light and enough energy using such films. Invisible, therefore forgettable, which may be dangerous in the sense that things are there, technologies, things that we completely forget about, but they are there and they transmit a lot of information, a lot of data. That's really the subject of the day. Li-Fi, after Wi-Fi, you would have the Li-Fi. It's LEDs, tiny LEDs, pulsating lights, and via this pulsation, they are transmitting the signal just as Wi-Fi is doing it, but it is not something we can see with our eyes, but the light is there, and you forget that you are in a situation where there are a lot of things going on. Or these textiles, connected textiles that are investigated by Google right now. They're financing this project, and the idea of having maybe clothes that would be connected, which at some point, again, raises the question of, is it a good thing? Because you would forget that your jacket or your trousers are just always permanently connected and telling maybe someone where you are, what you're doing, etc. Same thing with those tiny patches, constantly giving information about your pulse or your temperature or things like that. It's, in a sense, can be a very good thing. On the other hand, can be questioned. Carpets that are integrating RFID devices so that as soon as you walk there, we know that you walked there. So those are questions raised by this transparency in technology, transparency in the sense that I forgot it's there, but it's still there. And to finish with, this superpower of invisibility, becoming invisible. Again, glass is invisible, but I don't know if he's very happy about it, or if it is very happy about it. Penske is telling you that I don't know why people are so keen to put the details of their private life in public. They forget that invisibility is a superpower. It is indeed. And you can, well, play with materials in order to become invisible. You can like choose to be within a house that would be completely a mirror house so that it reflects what's outside and you kind of disappear, but you're still there. Or you could become completely black and opaque, which is kind of a paradox with the question of transparency. But another biomimicry example, scientists have been inspired by very, very white beetles. White, very white, because the light is fully reflected. And they have had the idea of reversing the system. So what's underneath the surface for this beetle is what happens within their black surface. And it's so black that actually you will not see how it is anymore. You cannot read the fact that there is a shape. So it is a way to become invisible in the sense that, well, we, with the human eyes, cannot really distinguish the shapes. And another way to become invisible is to be one of these octopuses. Like the switch of a button, or like in like milliseconds, they become invisible if there is a predator. They know how to become fully or almost fully, except the eyes and what's in their belly. But there is nowadays a way to, well, almost really be invisible using the metamaterials, those materials that have a negative refractive index, so that they create kind of a invisibility cloak. They kind of, well, hide you from the sight, which is an amazing and promising area of research. So far, within the visible light, there is a debate in did they actually do it or not? But this principle could, and is also very promising in the sense that it could protect some areas from, earthquakes or tsunamis. So I think it's quite interesting in your city because, again, thanks to these materials, you could create kind of a protective shield and you become invisible to the waves of the earthquake, for instance. And to finish with, because we're not far from the lunch time and because we are in the USA, invisible but functional, transparent but functional. Of course, I guess that you experience that every day when you are using ketchup. It's always a nightmare, I don't know about you, but you never know how much you're going to get, if it's going to be slow or too much, not enough, etc. But thanks to a transparent surface coating within the bottle, a very hydrophobic surface treatment, you can now completely control the flow of your ketchup. And that's a revolution. That's why technologies and materials are very important. Thank you very much.